Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Matt. That was perfect timing, actually. So, first of all, a welcome to you all. We've got a hugely eclectic, mixed audience this year. Probably one of the better-looking ones we've had for a while, actually. Now look at it. We've got a number of customers here today of other NAV resellers. So we've got people here who are looked after by other NAV resellers who have come along to look at our annual update of NAV. You're all very welcome, and we live in hope. We've also got a number of customers from our own customer base here, and we've got people from with all sorts of NAV solutions. We've got people here today who have got terabytes in their NAV database, thousands of NAV users spread across hundreds of databases, and that's just carpet right. And if you look at people like SCS, again with 1,000 online concurrent users, the largest systems that you'll find anywhere in the NAV world. But we've also got people with little 2 or 3 end user systems. So there's a huge breadth of people that use NAV. We've got .com companies with tens of thousands of orders coming in every day. We've got people here today who have had NAV since Moses was a boy. You'll be hearing later on from Sun Hydraulics who have had NAV forever. And we've got people here today from Matches Fashion, for example, who are brand new to NAV and implementing the latest 2013 R2 version very shortly and probably shouldn't be taking time out to be with us today with all the busy work that they've got to do to get that live. So, very broad audience. We've got retailers, manufacturers, wholesalers, service-type companies. We've got IT managers, finance managers, people who sell everything from dirty, smelly hydraulic things. Is that okay, son? To fashion, computing, all sorts of things. It's a real testament to the diversity and the strength of the NAV product that it can support so many different sorts of businesses and so many different sorts of users. And the key part of all of that is the one thing that brings us all together is within our organization, we've got Dynamics NAV at the core of our organization. It's the system which provides our business processes for our end users. It's the systems that we tell about our purchases and our sales, and inshallah, it's a system that tells us we made a small profit at the end of the year, and if not, it's a system that helps us understand why. So, as NAV gets better and better, it means that our organizations can get leaner and fitter and take advantage of new things, new technologies, to become more effective organizations. And some of the things that we hope that you'll see today are to help you go back to your businesses with ideas to make your businesses more efficient. So our aims today are to leave you better informed about the NAV world, to better be able to make decisions about where you should be going with your NAV system or what you should be doing in the future. We hope that you, like us, will become enthused if you're not already enthused. You will notice that one trait we do have is we are very enthusiastic about this NAV product. And we hope that at least you'll think of one new idea about everything that you see today to take back to your organization to make your organization better and more efficient. So, what we're going to go through this morning is 2013 R2, a little update. So we do this every year. We can't every year tell you everything about everything. So we try to tell you an update of what's happened in the year. We're going to tell you a little bit about how we've introduced more flexibility into the hands of your systems administrators and users. And we're very fortunate that from one of our customers, Sun Hydraulics, we've got the #1 employee who's going to tell you about their #2 employee, Nora, our automated user, who they employed working there recently. And then we're going to have the comfort break that Matt said, if you could hang around, mill around, stretch your legs, and run out to the little boys or girls room if you need to. That'd be great, but it's about a 10-minute break. Then we're going to go into talk about mobilization of NAV, using NAV in different ways out on handhelds. We're going to introduce our invoice matching product that we've been working on, and we're going to finish up with an update on our beloved Nora. So, the potted summary of this year. Microsoft's investment has been huge and quite exciting from a NAV perspective. Of course, every year they release now a version. So this year they released 2013 R2. Goodness knows who decides whether something should be R2 or 2014, but this is the title of this one is 2013 R2. And that's a significant release over and above the previous release that we had. But also, and very excitingly, NAV was the chosen product to be the first product out of the Microsoft stable, the first Microsoft ERP system to be integrated with Office 365. So if you're an Office 365 user, you can have SharePoint and Office 365 directly connected to your NAV solution. It was also the product that Microsoft chose to be the first product from the ERP stable to launch on Azure. Azure is Microsoft's cloud hosting platform. You can now go to the Azure hosting platform, say, I'd like a server, please. I'd like to have NAV on it, please. And you can spin up a server with NAV running on that machine. Everything you see today, we are all using cloud-hosted solutions. We're very into the idea of not having equipment in our offices, so we use both Modrus and Azure to host our systems. And NAV was also chosen as the BPO platform, which is business process outsourcing, where huge organizations like KPMG and BDO and Deloitte & Touche run thousands of small companies' NAV systems on their behalf, and NAV is the chosen solution to support that BPO. In our organization, we've invested in workflow to make it easier to set up, more efficient, easier to administer. We've invested more time and effort looking at better ways of reporting and different ways of reporting. We've invested in Nora, our automated user. As Matt said, we've looked at OCR scanning to try to improve particular processes. And we've invented a bookings engine. And we've done a lot of work around mobility. We had a session earlier on this year. We had 50 users came in about January just to look at mobility alone. So we know it's a topic that many of you are interested in. And our friends at Jet Reports, one of our key partners, have basically spent the year worrying about the speed of Jet Reports because they had a particular technical challenge to overcome, which I'm delighted to say they have overcome on steroids. So, what's new within NAV 2013 R2? Every time they come out with a new version of NAV, it seems these days they come out with a new user interface, which is quite amusing, really, because for the first 15 years or so of its life, the user interface hardly ever changed. So every time they bring out a new release now, we get a new slightly different user interface. We'll be going through that. The web client has been updated. Very nice visualization, so it just looks more tidy. Pages are accessible by OData. If you know what that means, it will be interesting to you. We will show you later, even if you don't know what it means, that it is actually quite interesting. The standard European payments mechanism is a key thing in Dynamics NAV, both this release and we expect in the next release improvements around the whole area of cash management and payment files. SEPA, for those of you that aren't aware, is a standard for payments that have got to be adopted by all the European countries, and I think we're on the target for something like 2016. We have to be SEPA compliant. And finally, we're going to be talking about a thing called NAV Basics. Microsoft had a product called C5. It's a very, very, very old, I think you could say it's like the Sage Line 50 in Scandinavian countries, certainly in Denmark. And it's a very simple process, and it's a very simple system. That was discontinued. They replaced it by putting very simple screens into NAV for that audience to use, a simple version of NAV for a particular market. And we actually think it's very interesting because the way they've designed the screens and the way they've designed some processes, I think apply as much to larger organizations as they do to tiny organizations. So we're already exploring how we can improve the core product, taking account of some of these things that they've been working on. So, the first thing we're going to talk about is the NAV 2013 user interface. My friend Mr. Cartwright over here log us into NAV 2013 R2. So, what's different from the previous version you saw? The tiles used to be white and they're now blue. Any color you like as long as they're blue. The sort of general look is that Office 2013 white look. It's a bit Marmite, because my friend over here thinks it's much better. I'm a little less sure, but it doesn't matter. It is the 2013 Office type look and feel. So, the role center is not really dramatically different than it was before, and we're going to show you other things on role centers later on. So just what we're going to do is we're going to go into a customer list to just show some of the basics. If we go to a customer list in R2, there's one overriding new thing. Interestingly, we showed this last year in our own version of our own reporting products, but finally you can now select any column and just click the column and sort it in up or reverse order of the column. And even on a field like the balance, which as you know is a calculated field. Oh my goodness, how long have we waited to be able to do that one little thing? Now this is actually, although it seems like a little thing, this is really part of the exploitation of SQL that they can now do now that they've no longer got to worry about the legacy of the old NAV database. Filtering is interesting. If we filter on, let's say, PS, and we say filter to this value, we get, obviously, the equivalent of putting a filter on one field. If we go back to the balance field and say only show filter to this value where the balance is 0, unfortunately, all the salespeople come back on again, because at the moment, as at the previous version, filtering, when you do a filter by this field, removes the previous filter. You can, however, put multiple filters on the top here and add multiple filters at one time. In my humble opinion, I think when you right-click and say add a filter to this field, it should keep the previous filters until you clear them. We're very fortunate today. In our guest, in our audience, we have Christian Beck. Where's Christian? There he is. Christian Beck, product manager for Microsoft Vedbeck. Very important person if you think I'm right on the filtering to pass that on. It's a very direct route to the guy who will be doing the filtering work. So, this is not news to him, by the way, as you can imagine. So, go to a customer card. So we double click on a customer card, very similar to as it was in the 2013 before, other than the new white look, the capitalized captions on the top of the client. Other than that, it's not that dramatically different. There is a session this afternoon. If you're not familiar with the RTC, the session this afternoon that Paul will be running is an introduction to the RTC and all the wonders of it. If you're used to using classic NAV, an older version of NAV that doesn't look like this, go to the RTC session this afternoon and learn all there is to know about finding and filtering and all the wonderful things you can do in this role-tethered environment. Okay. So that was the R2 user interface. Now we're going to move on to the web interface. So this is actually the web interface. So one thing they have done is it looks very similar to the full interface. Very similar in terms of it. Slight differences. You see the menu runs across the top of the screen. So instead of having home, master, data, and so on down the side, you've got the menu across the top and a sub-menu down the side. So if we go into, for example, an item list, so we go to master data at the top there, select items on the side menu. So similar, you've got a sort of hyperlink on the item, but other than that, very similar. You can obviously still sort on a column by clicking on a column header, and so on. And here's the interesting thing, and this is new in 2013 R2. If you right-click on a column, and you say filter on this column, and you say just show furniture, for example, you filter. And if you go to another field and you say only on product group, and put a filter on and say just chairs, it saves the filters. Unbelievable. So that's basically the way it should be, I think, in the main client. So Filtering is a new addition to 2013 R2. I think they've done a great job in the web client. If we go to a card, you can select the little button there, go to edit or view the card. Again, the card looks not massively different than it was before, but it has got a more pleasing look. If you've seen the 2013 web client, this is a much tidier view of the client. We can also now collapse and expand fast tabs and fact boxes, which again makes a lot of difference. The other thing we can do is we can change the look and feel of this client completely. So this is a little bit techie, so those of you that are not techie, don't worry about it. Basically, if we replace, there's a set of files which basically control how the web client looks, color it uses, and so on. This is a standard thing called a style sheet, which is used in most web applications. So there is a file that says what font color should it be. Should it be shading every other line on the screen? What color should the heading be? And so on and so on and so on. So what it gives us the ability to do is to change that. Now, where that might be relevant is if you want your customers to log on to your NAV system as a customer portal or a supplier portal, and you want it to look in a particular way that's skinned with your logo and the colors that happen to be your type of colors. Other than that, everything else is exactly the same. Just change the skin. Okay. So, worthwhile thinking about if you want to personalize and brand. Maybe you want a HR portal, for example. Very easy way to provide something that looks like a portal, but actually has a whole bunch of inherent functionality built in without you doing any work. So, that's the web interface. Yeah. Cache management and SEPA. Very brief on this because, as my colleague pointed out, Julia is running a session on this where she will tell you everything you need to know about the standard European payments mechanism. Suffice to say in this session that NAV is now supporting, in effect, BACS file payments, which might not be, or might be a surprise to you that it hasn't supported it before. In the past, things like BACS payments have been part of a UK localization or a countrywide localization. So things like bank reconciliation and bank matching have been things that we, as resellers, have provided to our customers rather than out of the box from NAV. Payment file support for file importing from a bank so that you can take customer payments and match them off was also things that we've done ourselves as modifications. They are now part of the R2 release. And support for direct debit is also an inherent part of the standard product solution. So all of those are very useful things to have added to the product. So we'll just very quickly show how that manifests itself. We go to finance and we go to the bank account card. And we go to the HSBC bank. You'll see that there's an HSBC bank statement import format, payment export format, and SEPA format. Those formats are ways of creating a mapping from a particular type of bank to a particular standard that we bring it into NAV. So it enables you to have each bank to have a different bank file format. And you'll see if we go to the bank reconciliation, when you import a bank statement, for example, you now have bank statement lines on the left-hand side here and our bank ledger entry from NAV here, and a matching function. After you've imported the bank statement, you match them, and all the matched lines turn green. So some of you already have this type of functionality that have been delivered by a modification, but now it's standard in the product. And those changes are also exposed on journals, so you can import bank files into journals as well. So, OData is our next exciting thing. So, standardized format for accessing report data between systems. OData is just a mechanism that, in theory, if all systems say, oh, look, we support OData, you'd be able to pull data in from different systems, all in a format that is supported by, for example, Excel and other tools. It was introduced originally as a NAV query in 2013. You could create in the design tool a NAV query and expose it as OData and use it elsewhere. It is now providing access to a page. That means all the pages that you see, your item ledger entry screen, your item list, your customer list, all of those pages can be exposed very easily to use in reporting tools. It is also bidirectional, although only under supervision. So, to show this, we're going to go into NAV, and first of all, we're going to go and just show item ledger, Paul. So we're just going to show, I'm sure you're all pretty familiar with an item ledger entry screen, but an item ledger entry in NAV is the record of every stock movement. So you've got things like, what type of movement was it? Was it a sale? Was it a purchase? And so on. You've got quantity, remaining quantity, sales amount, margin. Now these are actually calculated fields. These are actually calculated, sales amount and cost amount are actually calculated from the value entry. So they're not actually fields on that record. If you looked at them in SQL, they wouldn't be there, okay? So the page is making sense of some of this data. And also the page has got other functionality in it, like it's got the customer name and vendor name, which is not inherent in the record. The page is doing that work. There's some code on the page to read the customer record. So if we wanted to expose that information in a way that we could report it, we can simply go to the web services page. So web services is a way of saying, I would like to expose this part of my NAV system outside to other users, obviously under security. So there's a whole bunch of code units and pages already in there, but we're going to add a page, and we're going to add the item ledger entry page, and say, there we are, the item ledger entry page. We'd like to call it item ledger, and we want to publish it. As soon as you do that, the item ledger entry page is now exposed and will be visible outside your NAV system by other tools that you wish to use. We can copy the link. It gives us a link to the URL, so that gives us a nice long string that points to that page. And if we come out of that now and we fire up Excel, we go into a normal standard Excel spreadsheet using Office 2013, we go to Data, and we say, from other sources. One of the choices, sorry, just go back there, Paul. One of the choices on from other sources is from an OData data feed. So we say, yes, we want an OData data feed. We paste in our link that we copied out of NAV. We say we're going to sign in using our normal authentication. And now it's asking us for our NAV login. Okay, so it's still going through the same security. Am I allowed to look at this information? And it's saying, oh, good, I found a thing called item ledger with that link. I can give it a friendly name, so that when I use this in the future, obviously next time I use it in Excel, it'll already be there. All this connection will already be there. Say finish, and it says, okay, what do you want to do with the data? I'd like a pivot chart. Okay? So we're simply pulling this information in from the item ledger entry now with its calculations and all the other fields that it's got on the item ledger page. So we'll add, for example, customer, so maybe customer name as a field, and we'll add sales and margin amount. So sales amount, margin amount. Again, margin amount is not actually a field on the table, it's just calculated on that page. So instantly we've got a little graph there. Now we're going to say we want to filter by entry type because we actually only want sales entries. We don't want positive adjustments and purchases, we just want sales analysis. So now we get a little choice of choosing that we only want this report to be based on sales. Make the chart a little bit bigger. And now we could add a slicer. So one of the standard things you can do in Excel is to add a slicer. And we'll say we'll put a slicer on item category code so that we can say customers, yeah, but by which item category? We take the item category code. And now if we select furniture, for example, you've just got a customer analysis, sales and margin for furniture. Pick computers, bikes, and so on. Okay. So the speed of this connection is you know, it's very good. It's designed. This stuff is designed for this sort of analysis. What I would say, the obvious question that comes up when you look at this is, oh, good. Does that mean you don't need other tools like Jet Reports? It's a world of difference, and if you think that, you should go to the Jet Report session this afternoon. There's a world of difference between pulling in one data source and looking at a chart and creating sophisticated reports, okay? But this is certainly a tool in the armory, certainly something that is a great addition, and it really does expose lots of other things that we can do. What it does largely is it puts the control in the hands of the NAV developer or person to make the page have all the information they want on the page, and then it's simply available to the end user. So, OData wasn't as techie sounding as you might have thought. So, now we're going to look at the simplified NAV, the NAV basics. So, NAV basics has quotes and invoices and purchase invoices, okay? The missing gap here, there are no orders, okay? So I want to show you this because I want to show you the type of screens that are in the NAV basics, and I'd love your input in terms of what you think about using these types of screens in a more broader context in the NAV world. They've chosen to limit the functionality because it's designed, these screens and these processes are designed for simple businesses. So I think what we're looking to do is say, okay, for simple businesses, that's great, and some of you may be those simple businesses. And if you're not, the way the screens are designed and the processes are still very relevant, I think. So simplified screens, simplified processes, simplified correction processes, I think is a really nice little feature, but it's not all NAV functionality. So let's just go in and have a look and see if we can show you what's involved. So we'll go to, first of all, what we're going to do is going to come out of this role center and we're going to log in to a simple role center, a basics role center. And what we're going to do as part of this is we're going to expose our enhanced role center. So on top of the standard role center that comes with 2013 R2, we've added what we call the enhanced role center, and we'll be logging this person in. We're also going to use our central user management modification where we can pull all the user information and change. We're going to change the role center here. Just change it, Paul, that's fine. And we're going to change it to the basics role center. This central user console enables us to change all sorts of things like the contact details and the employee details and the warehouse employee details, all from one place rather than having to go to lots of different places to define a user. When we log in, we get our enhanced role center, okay? So this is, as you can see, any color you like as long as you want any color. So we're going to talk about this role center, enhanced role center later. What I want to show just quickly is if we drill down into one of these basic forms, we drill into quotes, you get a simple list. We select a screen, you go into a very simple quote screen. Finally, we have the idea of totals being displayed on the lines. Just make that a little bit wider, Paul. And we have, you know, not loads of unused fields on the lines here. We have only the relevant information at the top there. We can jump straight to the customer card, and if you go to a customer card, you see it's a very simple customer card. Very basic information. You've got the address and contact information on a tablet. When you pop out, there's the address details. And when we pop out the statistics tab, we see statistics on this customer with nice terminology, money that is owed, money that is expected. You've got a nice little graph here built in where the user can look at the aging of the debt and so on. So I think these screens are just neat and tidy. I think they're very nice screens. They've been thought out well. So if you come out of there, we're going to just show if we create a purchase invoice. Again, simple list. Go in to create a new purchase invoice. Select the vendor. So you see, not even giving a number. Who cares what the number is? Put the vendor information, put the vendor invoice number in, put an item number on the line, Moscow chair or something. I can put a quantity and a cost, and that's it, and post. So very simple, very tidy pages in comparison with some of the screens you see with lots of unnecessary fields. So now when it's posted it's saying, do you want me to go and look, do you want to look at the invoice you've just posted? Which is just a straightforward, nice feature. Of course you want to look at the invoice you just posted. So we go into another simple page. Here's the really lovely thing. If we've got this wrong, we can just press either cancel or correct. If we press correct, if you hover over it, sorry, Paul, just say no and hover over it, you'll see you get a nice little tooltip, tells you what it's going to do. If we press correct, it'll cancel that original invoice by doing a credit note and create a replacement invoice. So credit the original one, and here's your invoice to put the correct information on. That's just a really nice mechanism. For those of you that are used to using copied documents and all sorts of things in standard now, I think that's a really neat way of processing an invoice and a correction. So, love your feedback on those things. I think they're very interesting ways of designing screens. So, moving forward, we've got a number of enhancements that some of you have seen before. One of those is the enhanced role center. One is the way we have other ways to extend functionality to avoid you having to get a developer. Frankly, to avoid you having to ask us to do simple work that really should just be configuration. So that's what we're going to show now, is we're going to run through and we're going to show you some of the enhancements around the role center, in what we call enhanced fields, which are like adding fields to NAV without being a developer, and other ways of doing reporting. Okay, so first of all, we're going to change this, what was otherwise a nice simple role center, but we're going to change it to an even more sophisticated role center, just to show you what you can do. So we're going to change it to a role center called Day in the Life Tile Standard. We log off and log back on again. You'll see we'll have loads of panels, just to show the extreme of what you can do. The first one was one panel with one set of tiles, but you can also have lots of panels with lots of sets of tiles, and different users can have different sets of panels. So you see if we collapse the Finance tab, we can hide and show panels, and you see there's a Purchases tab underneath there, so we can show all the purchasing information. And obviously different types of users can have different groups of panels, and the user can choose where they want to show them on the screen, whether they want them on the left of the screen, the right of the screen, and whether they want it evenly split down the middle, and so on. The tiles themselves act as a menu, so you can actually get rid of this left-hand side menu, which simplifies the screen even more. If I wanted to look at my open customer invoices, I can simply click on Finance's Open Customer Invoices, and obviously it goes to the Open Customer Invoice ledger entries. So it acts like a menu. But equally, we have these menus. A tile group can have a list of menu items to select campaigns, and we'll see it goes straight to the campaign card. Okay, so a tile can act like a menu itself, or you can just have menu buttons on those tiles. So what we're going to do, we're going to just add in another set of panels. So we've got, if you go to customize this page, you'll see the user can be given a whole set of panels to choose from. They can hide the ones they don't want, and they can add other ones. So we'll put For Me, and we'll add that onto the right-hand side and move it up. And that's going to now add an extra set of tiles for us. So now we've got our For Me tiles. The For Me ones are things like my tasks, the workflows that I should be answering. Tagging, ask us about tagging in the break. So For Me tiles, so these are things that the business needs to do, and maybe I need my attention drawn to them, but these are specifically got my name on them, okay? So what we're going to just do here is we're just going to add a tile on here. We're going to say we want a new tile, and we're going to say this is my purchase orders. So you know on a purchase header there's the purchaser code. This purchase order is for me, yeah? I'm buying it. So maybe I want to have my purchase orders. So we put in a title, we select from a list of colors that we want our tile to be, and we can click to say what information do you want to show on the tile. We want to count the information in the purchase header table, but we don't want everything in the purchase header table because that also has unposted invoice in it and quotes, so we only want where the document type is order. Now if we did that, we'd get all purchase orders in the purchase header table. So we have this concept of smart filters. So if we find the purchaser code, field on the purchase header, we can actually say where the purchaser code, now I could just say where the purchaser code is IH, but then anybody that looked at that tile would only get it from me as IH. But I can put in here, I want it where it's my person code. You see, salesperson purchaser code. So we have these smart filters to have the concept of me. Whoever is looking at this will get their purchase orders. And then we say, what page do we want to run? We want to run the purchase order list, I think, when we drill down on it. And that's it. We do that, you click on OK, close the tile down, and there's our extra tile with our color. When we click on it, it takes us down to our purchase orders. Okay? So you imagine you can build roles for people. Users can build them if you want them to, or you can build them on their behalf. But tiles can be much more than just a count of something. They can actually be KPIs with values. So if we go to our KPI box and we say I want a new tile, and again, all these different groups, you could call it inventory KPIs or finance KPIs or whatever you want to call it. We add a new tile. In this case, we're going to call it, we're going to add the inventory value. We want to sum up all the value entries in our NAV system and get a total inventory value. Save us running that report that takes a day and a half to run the inventory value report. So we click here to see what information we want to show on the tile. And in this case, we want to sum information from the value entry table, which is the place where all the transactions happen whenever you do a transaction that affects your inventory value. But we can actually add up multiple fields, not just one field. We can say, I want to add up some of you will know, there is both a cost amount actual and a cost amount expected. The cost amount actual, the cost amount expected is posted when you do a purchase order received not invoiced, and it gets moved to actual when it's been invoiced. So in this case, we're going to say I want to sum both of those fields up, the actual and the expected, and I want to add them together as my value to display on the tile. I'll round it to by 1,000. Sorry, I'll divide it by 1,000. I'll round it to the nearest pound. I'll put a pounds as a prefix, k as a suffix. Say OK, and we get. And then, sorry, I should then say. Then we want to say, what do we want to do when we click the tile? We click the tile. Where do we want to go down to? To be honest, we don't want to go down to value entries. That's ridiculous. That's far too low a level of detail to click on it and drill down to value entries. So we can say we want to run an object and we want to run the page, the item list. Because it would make much more sense to click on an inventory value tile and drill down to a list of items, wouldn't it? Makes much more sense. We can then give it an image. So we have a whole set of image libraries that we can pick tiles from. I think we can take, doesn't matter too much what it is. And we're going to make it large, so it's a big tile. Okay? So now we have inventory value, £1,495,000. And when we drill down behind, we get the drill down to the inventory, and because we can now sort on that column inventory value there, here is our inventory sorted with all our biggest inventory items. Straight from our dashboard and KPIs, drilling down to the underlying information at a relevant place to drill down to. Okay. So, and those mathematical calculations, by the way, can be any type of calculation. They can be, averages and all sorts of arithmetic. So, next thing we're going to show is enhanced fields. Enhanced fields are the same concept. If you think of those queues are a bit like adding a queue to the R2 screen without being a developer, enhanced fields are the ability to add fields without being a developer. So, first of all, we'll drill down our inventory value and we'll go to a Paris chair. So we'll do find using our Control F to find our item, bring up our Paris chair. You see over on the right-hand side here, we've got a fact box, enhanced fields. These are all fields that have been added in data, not in the SQL tables. They've not been added technically, they're added in our enhanced field mechanism. We configure those fields, and you can see here's a bunch of fields that we've already got. There's an enhanced field called inventory value, there's an enhanced field called last week's sales, and so on. And in this case, we're going to add a new field, and that new field is going to be called range code. So let's say we've decided we need to categorize our products, we need a new field called range code. So we'll name them after famous conservative politicians like Churchill, Thatcher, Cameron, and so on as our range names. Okay. See the difference in our. So now we can say it's of type pick from list. Okay? So because it's pick from list, we could also have calculated and concatenated fields where we stick fields together, but we'll have pick from list. And at the top of the screen, we've got a pick from list button, which will say, okay, so what are our options? So we've filled those out, we've keyed in our range options. So now we want to go into some items. So we'll go into the edit the item, and you'll see there's a fast tab here. And one of the things that Paul did was he ticked the box to say, show my enhanced field on the fast tab as opposed to on the fact box. Okay? So we've got a range code here. We can drop down a little box and get a list of valid values that we can fill into there. We can page to our next item, fill it in with another politician, and so on. Okay? So even as an end user, certainly as a system administrator, we can add fields and categorize anything in NAV. This is not related to items, this is related to any part of NAV, your customers, your contacts, your vendors, purchase orders, any part of NAV. Okay, so now we've got those enhanced fields added. We'll add another one, so we'll add a calculated field this time, and we'll call it free stock. So free stock is often calculated in different ways in different organizations, and nearly always we end up changing the programming code to address that. In this case, we're going to say free stock is calculated as what? Inventory minus sales orders plus purchase orders. You could always argue whether it includes transfer notes and so on. Different people have different views on how to calculate their free stock. Okay. You could even exclude inventory in a particular location. Don't make that part of my free stock. These enhanced fields can have filters applied to them. So you could have a filter called unusable inventory, which is inventory in this location over here. Take that away from the inventory to make the free stock. And we'll show it on the fact box. Okay, so by doing that, you now get a fact box with the free stock calculated on your item card. So again, don't forget these fields can be added to any part of the information in NAV, not just items. We're just using that as our example. So where else can we use these enhanced fields? So we can use these on reporting. Sorry, Paul, stay on there, Paul. So we can use them in our enhanced reporting. So there's a number of places you can use enhanced fields. We've created an internal quick reporting mechanism so that users who just want to put together some fields to make a quick report can do so without too much technical knowledge. So when we bring up our quick report screen, we simply say here, what do we want to use as a table? Item table. Go down to the field name and simply start typing field. So we've got number, name, number, description, item category code, range code, which is our new field. You could do a lookup, for example, and we could pick. So we can say that we want particular enhanced fields and do a lookup and pick maybe our inventory value. That's probably enough, I think. Okay. So if you click home, you'll see there are a couple of other buttons here for different design options. This is the simple one. Just give me a list of fields. When we hit report, that will now run through, take those pieces of information, and display the information in a list form. Okay. So it's a report. It's inside NAV, but it's a report with the fields that we want on it. So a number of things we can do. We can still sort in order of inventory value and so on. We can also sort in order of our range code, our brand new field that we've only just added. We can also click and say we want to group our inventory by that range code, the field that we've just added. Okay? So the simple report is a simple way of getting some NAV information to a user. He she chooses the columns, and you can filter and sort and group the information. And you can drill down to say, okay, who are those people that are in the Bevan, which products are they in that range code? So enhanced fields and enhanced reports, I should just say if you control an E, by the way, you can take that information and send it out to Excel. So then you can print it in however you want to arrange it. So we're going to save this report now. And we're going to save it, and we're going to call it Stock Value Report. So you can save the reports, and then they can be used again. So you could create reports for users, okay? And the final point on that is that you can filter the information. You can filter. You can say on this report when it runs, put filters on before the start of it, so only extract items with inventory which is not 0, for example. So the reports can have filters applied. They can even have filters applied to the enhanced fields that you've only just added. Okay, so you've got a lot of flexibility as ways of reporting information using this tool. Okay, so that was our brief update on some of the things that we've been working on, some of the things that are available. So now I would like to introduce to you one of our enthusiastic customers. Ian works at Sun Hydraulics and has used NAV forever. He's the guy that bought it from Moses originally. And Ian is going to talk to you a little bit about how they use Nora at Sun Hydraulics. So give a welcome to Ian Callow from Sun Hydraulics. Thank you. Do you want to click on?
Paul's going to drive. Good morning, everyone. As Ian said, I'm not an employee of the NAV People. I'm a customer, so don't blame me for any of their stuff you might be worried about. And the NAV People have asked me just to discuss briefly how we use Nora. And if you're not familiar with Nora, Nora is an automated user that runs in your NAV system and can do lots of clever things based on lots of different inputs. And I think Nora is Navision Open Response Architecture or something like that. Okay. So we use this automated user to do a number of things for us. Basically customer interaction. Customers can place or request quotes, place sales orders, request copy invoices, and also request statements, all through this automated system purely by sending an email. In order to explain why we decided to take this approach as opposed to a more traditional web shop, I'll just give a little bit of background about Sun. I know it's very boring, so I will be brief, but just to explain the kind of business we are and why the traditional add-to-basket type of web shop wasn't really for us. So we provide, or we manufacture hydraulic equipment. We're based in Florida, and we have an outlet obviously in the UK and various other countries throughout Europe. You can move on, Paul. Wherever you see hydraulics, fire engines, platform lifts, everywhere, you probably, there's a good chance you'll find some components. The one on the far right there is the wave energy product in the Forth of Clyde, which uses hydraulic components for this floating mechanism to generate power. So what we see there is a typical product of ours, and this comprises of a number of different individual components. You can see there's a large metal block in the middle, and which we refer to as a manifold, and a number of cartridge valves that are inserted into that manifold to become a complete assembly. Now, the reason that this makes things a little bit different is because that block is one of 50,000 different blocks that have got different functions, cavities inside them, and those cartridge valves that are screwed into them are one of 30-odd, 40,000 different cartridge valves. And of those valves, they can have an almost infinite number of settings and pressure settings and flow rates and everything else, which means our total list of items in NAV is millions, because there are millions of permutations. And what we endeavour to do to maximise our inventory is not to tie up any of these components into an assembly until we know exactly what the customer wants. So the customer may buy one of these individual cartridges, maybe 20, 24, 5 quid, or they may want to buy the whole lot, or they may have exactly the same but with a different cartridge in, or whatever. So in order for us to make our inventory available, we don't stock that as a top level item, very rarely. But if a customer requests that as a top level item, we need to look in the bill of materials to find what all the components are, so we can show what the availability is on the fly. Everything is calculated when a customer asks for a quote or a sales order, so we know what the availability of the finished product is, or whatever they're asking for. And that meant from a traditional kind of add to basket, it wasn't really going to work for us, because it would have to be making completely live queries on our NAV database, which, while is possible, is quite an expensive solution. So what we wanted to do is that a customer could purely send an email with a part number, and Nora would enter that into NAV and come up with the answer, because we've had a lot of customization around our quotes and sales orders, which as soon as we put an item number on, it immediately goes off and gives the availability of the top level item, which is something that standard NAV doesn't do. So in order so that we didn't have to try and replicate that functionality in a web shop, we thought if we can get somebody, by which I mean Nora, to type in this request into our customized NAV, all that work's already been done. So that's just some brief metrics on what the kind of number of sales orders and quotes that we do per day. And some background, Ian already mentioned some of that. We've used NAV since my colleague Ray went and purchased it from Norway or wherever it was back in the day, and came back with it on 3 or 4 floppy disks. But one of the things we get, we work as a distributor and an individual reseller to our customers. So we can get large orders to OEM manufacturers, which we know in advance and so on, but because we work as a distributor to very small companies, these are the typical questions that we get asked. We'll get 50 times a day, somebody phone up, say, how much is this and when can I have it? Which is something that standard NAV doesn't do particularly well in terms of availability. And we have people working answering the phones that are either highly skilled technical people where a customer may make an inquiry about an application or what's the best product for this particular problem I've got, or they may simply be saying, can I have 10 of this part number? But people that are answering the phone have got that skilled knowledge, and if they're just going to be saying, can I have 10 of whatever, that's an expensive resource just to have answering the phone. So we introduced Nora, and she does all this stuff, and she does all this simply with the customer sending an email, and it's that simple. And it will kind of skip through it. So customer asks Nora for either a quote form or a sales form, which Nora sends straight back to them. Customer fills it in, and Nora then enters that information into NAV and sends the answer back. This is a step-by-step example. Customer sends a request. They simply just have to type in the subject line report, and then somewhere in the body of the email, quote form, sales order form, invoice, statement, whatever. Nora replies with a blank quote form in this case. That's just a standard Excel form that Nora sends back. Some clever stuff going on behind it, but essentially it's just an Excel. It arrives as a blank quote form, or the sales order form looks virtually the same for the customer to fill in. Some of the stuff's already populated by Nora. For example, by looking at the customer's or looking at the sender's email address, Nora works out which company they work for, and it fills in on the header the customer, and there are some drill downs, ship to code and so forth. If the customer has multiple ship to addresses, as many of ours do, they can drill down on that, get the shipment address they want, and then they can start filling in line by line on the quote form to return it to Nora. This is an example here. Customer starts entering the lines. These are our part numbers. There are some other things like the setting. They can enter a customer part number if they have that, request a delivery date, quantity, the kind of things that you would put on any sales order or quote form. And the blank form that Nora sent, the customer can just reuse that as many times as they like. They don't have to request a form every time they want a quote. They can just keep that on their desktop, fill it in, email it to Nora, and then you'll see what happens. Nora immediately replies with the quote as a PDF, and that's what the quotation looks like. So customer gets that in seconds, and also because that's been generated from NAV, the quote is already in NAV. So if the customer then phones up and says, yes, that's fine in terms of price, delivery and so on, I'd like to make that an order, then our sales team can just click the button to turn that into an order. One enhancement that we're thinking about is whether if the customer themselves say, yeah, that looks fine, that within that form they can send a response back to Nora themselves. But that's how it is at the moment. And this is just a summary of that just in video form, which isn't quite real time, but Nora does send things back pretty quickly. So customer types in, sends an email to Nora, and report in the subject line, as I say, so that Nora knows it's something for her, and quote form is in the text for what they want to, what the type of report they want. They could have, in that port, could have put sales order or invoice or statement, and Nora would have responded accordingly. Okay, so it's just using standard functionality in Excel just to email the document that we've created as an attachment back to Nora, and that's it. That's all the customer has to do. Next thing the customer gets is the email back from Nora, and you might recognise the same, if you can read them, it's a bit difficult. The same part numbers are in there, and lo and behold, exactly the same quote appears in NAV. So from our point of view as as Sun Hydraulics, no human's done anything here. The customer's done effectively we've outsourced the work to the customer. They've done the work. They've asked for the quote. Nora has metaphorically sat in the corner, typed all this stuff in, and sent it back to the customer within just a few minutes. So saves the expensive resource of a human having to pick up and answer the phone. Sales order process works in exactly the same way. What we do at the moment is if the customer requests a sales form as opposed to a quote form, Nora fills it all in, creates a sales order. At the moment, we don't release that sales order. We just let our internal sales team just give it the once-over to make sure there aren't any silly delivery dates or anything like that. But then, assuming everything's okay, they can just confirm it. And then the two other things which are probably less used by the customers, because it obviously means that they're eventually going to give us some money. But they can request, just send simply an email with statement on. They get an up to the minute, literally, statement sent through. And likewise, they can saves the accounts department. Most inquiries from customers from an accounts perspective is, can I have a copy of invoice, whatever, because I've lost it, eaten it, whatever. And Nora will do that for us straight away as well. So yeah, in terms of numbers, the 20 inquiries a day has gone up slightly since that slide. We're hoping to get more and more customers to take it up, because it obviously saves us, as I said, saves a human being doing the work. And because we distribute to all over the world, Far East and so on, with a time difference and language problems and so forth, quite a lot of the customers that have embraced this idea are from overseas, because they can get an answer of stock availability primarily, within minutes, any time of the day when we're all tucked at home in bed. So yeah, as it says, free staff to handle other things, and Nora sits there for 24 hours and never complains. The point there about turning down other job offers was because so impressed was somebody with Nora's rapid response at all hours of the night and day, phoned up to see whether they could offer Nora a job. That's probably one of the problems we have with Nora having a human name. Just shortly after implementation, I just happened to be walking past reception, and I heard the receptionist speaking, sorry, we don't have anyone called Nora working here. And there was obviously causing confusion with the other, and the customer was adamant that we did, because he had just received an email from her. So I said, oh, Sue, put that through to me, I'll sort that out. So I spoke to the customer and said, oh, you've got a problem with an order from Nora? Yes, can I speak with Nora, because I only put it on yeah, and this was a customer who had already filled this form in and gone through this procedure. So yeah, Nora's not a real person. Nora's kind of an automated thing with a friendly name. There was a pause. Has she left? No. But eventually they got the hang of it, and yeah, so she just sits there, works away in the corner, and processes these orders and inquiries for us to save us doing it ourselves. So it's been a very useful thing for us. So that's it, really. Thank you very much for listening to me.
In our first of our 3 segments pre-lunch, first thing we're going to talk about is mobile nav, or mobilizing nav, and then mobile nav. So mobilizing nav. We've got a lot of interest from lots of people, including ourselves, about the idea of people having information available on tablets, phones, laptops, whatever, iPads. And last year we talked about a couple of ideas we had then. We had a lot of feedback from customers after last year. This coincided with the launch, or the adoption, I should say, of another product called Mobile Nav. So we're going to talk to you about 2 solutions to mobilize your users. There's an obvious one of warehouse users. Most people are familiar with the idea that a user in a warehouse has a handheld terminal, scans things, puts goods away with the handheld scanner and so on. But with these products, we're talking more about mobilizing into an audience which is newer. So your salesmen, your finance people, doing expense management for all your staff, and so on and so on. So Mobile nav. Mobile nav, as its name says, is a way to deploy any nav information on a mobile device. It works on tablets, it works on Android, iOS, so iPhone, iPad, Windows 8, Windows CE, so pretty much every way that you could have a device that you can carry in your hands, you can use mobile nav on, and multiple of them, so you could have any combination of them. The one thing it doesn't support is a BlackBerry, unsurprisingly. So, if you use it on a phone, or let's call it a slim device, it looks like this one on the right-hand side here. You get one screen, and each time you select another screen, it will overlay that space. If you use it on a tablet, you get 3 screens. So it's not a bigger screen, you simply get one on the left that opens one on the right, that opens another one on the right, and they keep shifting along, okay? We'll show you later on. So, the advantage with mobile nav, one of the huge advantages is the web service technology that came about with the launch of the RTC technology means that you can write applications, as they have with mobile nav, that just poke into nav and say, can I have an item list, please, and display it back. Can I have a customer, and display it back. So web service-based means that the application itself, when you're scrolling up and down, isn't using nav, but when you select an item, it is asking nav for the information and displaying it, which means that anything that's in nav can be displayed outside nav. I'm going to describe it as online with offline capability. There are the mobile nav guys here are in the room somewhere. Could you put your hands up? There's some people at the back there from mobile nav. Mobile nav is a company called Multisoft. So I'm going to describe it, and you can certainly talk to them, see if I'm right. I would say it's online with offline capability. It was designed mainly and works beautifully as an online solution. It has the capability to say, I'm taking this offline, and now I'm going to put it back online. But it's not a sort of, oh, I haven't got a Wi-Fi, therefore I'll do this. It's you take it offline and you put it back online. It's very, very extendable. You can add new fields to it. You can create new pages in Nav and deploy them. So you can create brand new applications just for the mobile workforce that don't even exist normally in Nav. And it supports all the platforms. So, what we're going to do to start with is to show you an example of what that looks like if we were using a device in a warehouse type environment. So, as you can see in this particular environment, our warehouse user has a very pretty desktop on his iPhone. We're actually using, for this demo, an iPod Touch. So, about as cheap as device you get, sort of 140 quid or something. You can get built-in scanners for these, and mobile nav supports barcode scanners. We haven't got one on this particular one. So we're going to go into warehouse activities. So when you log in, you get a little menu. We're going to select warehouse putaways. That will give us a list of putaways with all the information we need. We need to go to that bin and put this item away. So we can select an item. We can bring up a screen like this where we say scan either the item or bin here, and down the bottom here we can say which of those things has been scanned. We can configure it to say you must always scan both the bin and the item that you put away to make sure you get it right. Or scan the bin and I'll assume you have got the item you're telling me about, or scan the item and I'll assume you got to the bin that I told you to go to. So you can configure it whichever way you want. So we scan the item into the thing at the top there. You see if you've got a barcode scanner, you just press the barcode scan, and that then pulls the information in, validates that the item is the right item. If it wasn't, you'd have to scan I've put away something wrong. Why did I put away something wrong? Or I put it away in a different place. Why did you put it away in somewhere I didn't tell you to put it? So when it's doing that update, that's it calling nav, saying he's done this, and returning the information back. So that's now a put. We've said done. We say done. So you say, yes, I've done that. Okay, fine. Then it'll disappear and update nav accordingly and disappear off our list. So that is doing a put away using a mobile nav. So that could apply to receiving, stock counting, anything. Scan the item, put in a number, press a button, and it's updated. In a more tablet type mode, so let's call it nav on the road. Let's talk about consultants or expenses. I mean, pretty much every one of your staff members has probably got some kind of tablet that they use out of hours. They've got an iPad at home or something. So if we're using a tablet, when we go into mobile nav, you get obviously a wider screen, but on the right-hand side, we can configure per different user profile all of the things they're allowed to do. So we could select, in this particular case, what are we saying, customers. So we're going to select a customer list. So when obviously Paul, you'll have to trust me, Paul is pressing the thing that says customer. We've got a customer list. Obviously you can scroll up and down like you can with any normal sort of iPad-y type thing. And we can find a customer, the Canon Group PLC down there. When we click on that, it brings up a card. So this is the card information defined in NAV. I should say, in NAV, you have a customer card and a customer list page specifically for mobile nav, because you might not want all the same fields on your mobile nav customer listing card that you do inside NAV. But they're all the same fields, and one of the nice things, of course, being on some kind of tablet is things like if I click on the postcode, it will use the native application on the iPad or whatever device you've got to show how we get to that particular customer. And obviously, if you had a phone, you could click on the phone icon and it would take you there. And if you click on the email icon, it will obviously take you out into an email, and so on. So all of the stuff that's native on a device is exposed through mobile nav. You can, if you go into the card, you can hide fields. So if you click on this little button here, you can see you have multiple buttons. So those are the equivalent of the menu buttons at the top of the ribbon in nav. You can hide fields just like you can inside nav. So you could say, well, we don't want these horrible general product posting groupy stuff. Hide them off the screen and they won't appear again. That's per user, so a user can set those. We can drill down, so if we go onto the balance, you can see we've got the balance button there. If we click on it, we drill down to the underlying customer ledger entries. And if we wanted to, we could select one of those invoices, and one of the buttons at the bottom there is copy invoice, which would obviously run. So that runs a report in nav and displays the invoice back. So it's calling nav, asking it to run the report, and sending it back to the mobile device. So you can imagine all of these, deploying any application is just a combination of which nav functionality do you want to deploy. We can go into the information and we can edit it. So we go back to the customer and we go to, for example, the credit limit, and we change the credit limit. We can edit the information, provided we're allowed to. And obviously when you edit that information, you'll see, first of all, for example, it's blocked. It's blocked it because in nav, we've configured it to say, if we change the credit limit, block the customer until the credit limit change has been approved using the workflow mechanism. Okay? So it's done all the same things on mobile nav because it's just called nav, made the update, taken the information, displayed it back. So all of that standard logic inside nav works on the mobile nav device. Okay. Nice to use, nice to see sort of quick examples if we do something like expenses. If you click on admin, we've got expenses here, expense line. We can record, we've got a new expense line. We can type in the information about the expenses and the amount of the ticket. And then that information goes back and creates an expense entry inside nav. So simple sort of ideas. You can take pictures here, take a picture and upload. So obviously we could take a picture or take it from our camera roll, take a picture of our expenses, and that information will be passed back into nav. So again, it's given us the ability to deploy things like expense management in a different way. So as I was saying at the beginning, because we have these technologies, it enables us to think broader about that process. We've actually created now a full expense processing system inside nav with expense header and lines, approval processes and so on, to support the fact that we've got this on mobile nav. So we can change nav functionality to exploit what you can do on a device. One thing we should just show is if you go to an item and we go to, we can filter information. So we can say, just like we can in nav, just filter chairs, for example. So you get a list of chairs. If we went to something like our Paris guest chair, you can see if we go to enhanced fields here, we can link out and we can show all the enhanced fields. So there is our range code that we added earlier on in our enhanced field demo. There's our free stock calculation that we added earlier on in our demonstration. There's a good example of an enhanced field that concatenates lots of things together to make a human sentence. 25 Paris guest chairs are due on a particular date, because that's an enhanced field. Okay, so mobile nav supports the idea that we have enhanced fields too. Okay, moving swiftly on. In addition to that, we found a particular type of environment where we think we need to do more than that. Mobile nav is a brilliant, generic, you can do anything you like with this application, deploy any type of functionality, but it looks like it looks. And I often say, the upside of mobile nav is the simplicity of the way it looks. The downside of mobile nav is the simplicity of the way it looks. It's fabulous when you want that simplicity, but sometimes you want a little bit more than that. So we're actually designing an application that we launched in the summer, which is web service-based synchronization. So we're pulling information and holding it locally on the iPad. This is only iPad specific. It's hybrid online and offline. So it will say, if I can send this order, for example, back to Nav, I will. Otherwise, I'll queue it till later. But it's offline when you're actually using, for example, products and customer records. It's designed specifically for the selling function. So the specific aim is to improve the selling function. And because of that, because it's on an iPad, it's integrated with chip and pin, because these days you could just buy an app to do chip and pin. So we'll show you that. We call this application Anywhere. Some of you will have seen our initial prototype of this last year, where we were using a technology called FileMaker. The feedback we got was it doesn't look iPad-y enough. It doesn't look in that sort of feel like an iPad app, and it didn't, because it was using that technology. So this one we hope does. So you'll see here if we log in. So we're on an iPad. Oh, there, 2 numbers down. So we log in. When you log in, you get the obvious starting point, which is what is it the customer wants to buy. So this is very much driven as a customer-led sale. So we'll pick living room, for example, and we get a list of all the next level things down. So we'll have sofa and armchairs, which are part of that product category, and that will give us a list of actual products. So these are end products. So we'll pick the Jupiter 3-seater sofa, and you'll see that. Did you pick? It's hard to do with it plugged into the VGA, don't you? We had to have one glitch today, didn't we? So to be focused on it, this is purely sales driven, not a generic thing for all sorts of different things. So are you? Okay. So the reason that we felt in this particular environment that we needed something more than mobile nav is because that particular function, you need to deploy a very low training requirement application. You need something that people can look at and use very straightforward and simply in a way that they would expect it to be used. So we're looking very much at the sort of basket type idea rather than it's an ERP on a handheld device. So we select our sofa and armchairs, we select our 3-seater sofa. You'll see we got little things like there's only so much space you can put on a tablet, but if we click on the description, we can put out a whole load of other information about that product. If we click on the thing, we drag out from the side, we can have unlimited amounts of scroll menus on the side to have different functions that we want to call for this particular item, to call other systems to get other information back about this particular product. If we click on the actual picture itself, we can blow the picture up into the full-size picture, and tap it again, and we just scroll up and down to move between products, similar products, or other products in the range. Obviously, we can then click Add to Basket to put the product into the basket, and we can click the basket button at the top to show what items are in the basket, how much it's currently going to cost, and we can do all the usual things like put the person's name, and so on, record all the customer's details. And obviously, in this case, this will be sent back when we communicate it back to Nav, and customer records and contact records will be created in the CRM system and so on. And again, because it's on an iPad, we get access to use things like postcode validation software, postcode Anywhere in this particular case. We can say this item, how the item's been paid for. We can use PayPal, and we can use credit cards and cash and so on. So we select credit cards. That brings up how much money are they going to pay. So you could be using a PDQ, but you could also be using an integrated device on your tablet. And you can add attachments. So with the attachments, you can add, for example, a signature. Oops, unplugged the thing. You can add a signature. You can add pictures from the camera. So if the customer wants to give you a picture of how to get to his house, for example, So you can select add new attachment there and pick from your camera roll, and so on. And then at the end, you complete the order. Anyway, I'm sure you get the gist of that. So there is a session on this afternoon on mobile nav and that application. So we very much would welcome your input onto that. We're at the sort of, I would say, the fourth quarter of the development of that application, and we're very much looking for input into that for our final push. Okay. So, invoice matching. Now, completely different subject, finance-oriented, been around in NAV for years. The idea that, of course, you raise a purchase order, you get some goods received, and then you get an invoice from the supplier. The standard NAV process for that is you get the piece of paper invoice, you look at it, you go into NAV, you create an invoice header, you put the supplier in, you do a get receipt lines, it shows you all the open receipts, you select the receipts that are on this invoice, you pull them into the invoice, and that's your invoice, which, if it doesn't match, you adjust and post. That, frankly, isn't that efficient a way of doing it if you've got a lot, and we've got lots of customers who've got lots of invoices and need to do this much quicker. So we sat down with the objective to standardize the business process to make a very straightforward flow of information for the purchase ledger clerk, to maximize how quickly they could put that information in, to exploit the information already in NAV. We don't need to do, in quotes, three-way matching. They're not three different systems. We already know the purchase order. We've already got the GRN in the system. And we looked to integrate OCR technology to make all of this stuff as good as it could be and automate it wherever we could. So there is a session on this again this afternoon, but we thought we would give you a heads up for those that can't make that session. First of all, we're going to go from our finance role center. We've got invoice matching batches. So we go into an invoice matching batch. We've got a list of batches. We'll create a new batch. And I just want to explain what an invoice matching batch is. So we give it a code. So an invoice matching batch is so we've got a big pile of invoices next to us on our table. This is the batch that refers to all of these invoices. So a line on here is a header of an invoice, okay? So we can do it manually. We can say, okay, I've got an invoice from Electronics Limited. It's on this purchase order number. It could also be on a delivery note number. It's got this document date. It's got this due date, and it's got this invoice number. Okay, so we're simply reading the things here, and as we're keying them in, put it on the other side of the desk, key the next line in. So it's a very fast way to put the order headers, the invoice headers in, even if you're doing it this way. It's a much quicker way to key in invoices than it is going into an invoice screen per se. So one of the things I'll just elaborate whilst Paul's typing is you can also, as you're going through, print a barcode. So as you've got these invoices here, put them on, press the button to print a barcode, little barcode printer, stick the barcode on top of the invoice, take it away later on and scan it. And one of Nora's processes is that she will match up scanned documents with the barcode against the relevant purchase invoice in NAV. So the idea of later on scanning after you've input it is supported by the use of that barcode entry. Okay? So once we've keyed this information in, and I should say, so you actually can input either a delivery note number or a purchase order number, and obviously what the system was doing there is to validate that this purchase order does come from this vendor and so on. Once we've done that, they're all waiting to be matched. That thing there says waiting to be matched. We click the match lines, and what that does, yes, you've got one that hasn't got a vendor invoice number on. Yes, haven't got any with a vendor invoice number. So we hit match lines, and what that does is it runs through, behind the scenes, creates an invoice, does a get receipt lines, brings the value back, and checks whether the value is the same value you think it should be. If it is, it says it's matched. If it's not, it's outside tolerance. And in this particular case, this one is waiting to be matched because I'm not sure, to be honest, but there's probably a reason. So when it's outside tolerance, we can choose how we want to deal with that. We can have an action that says either allow the difference. So it's only, I don't know what it is on that particular case, £3, and we haven't set up any tolerances. But we'll say we can allow the difference. But you can also say dispute and raise a debit note, and it'll automatically raise a debit note. So once we do that and we then carry out action messages, it will then basically update that invoice So that is now run through, and if we show the invoice, you'll see we've actually automatically made that invoice match by adding an extra line posting to a particular account for the adjustment. Okay, so that's the manual way of doing invoice matching, which is better than we have today a standard NAV of just putting invoices on. I'm sure you would agree. But if we take that a stage further and we create a new invoice matching batch, and in this case we use the automation. So we say read invoices. When we say read invoices, it takes the invoices that are in a directory. So we've got a directory called demo invoices. When we select that, we've got two choices here. We can say read the invoices and tell me when you've done. One of the nice features in NAV 2013 R2 is the idea of a background process. You can fire off a background process to post an invoice in background, or like this, process some invoice scanning in the background, and I don't have to sit here with my screen locked, fire up another user or whatever. I can just simply say, tell me when you've done it, and our workflow system will tell you when it's finished. In this case, we're just going to say we're going to read them now, don't worry about it. We can wait, there's not that many. So basically, it's running through each invoice. It's running through the invoices looking for a vendor invoice number, a purchase order, a date, a document date, a due date, and so on and so on. And it's run through a whole bunch of invoices here, and it's pulled all the relevant information in. Okay? We can then say match the lines. When we do that, it's run through, and it's matched these lines. This one was different, but it's within a tolerance. We can have a tolerance set up against the supplier, and that tolerance is already set, and therefore it was quite happy that this is matched within the tolerance, so you don't have to deal with it. The one that's waiting here is because it didn't find a PO on the document. If we look at the document, and over here the process has brought the documents in so we can open up the document as a user and see them, and if you have a separate screen, so you've got your invoice screen over here, you can obviously look at the invoice matching batch, and over here the scan, you can see it's actually got a purchase order number JRI, and it couldn't find that in NAV for that supplier. So what it does say, I'm not sure what that is, so we can actually say, yeah, okay, we know. It did find out, by the way, that it was for the right supplier. It has got a PO JRI. It's put it in red to say that doesn't exist in NAV. That's because Matt, for example, hasn't raised a purchase order when he's ordered something from Jet Reports. He simply phoned them up and said, can I have a license, please, as is usually the case. And so once we keep that information in, we can say this is actually a miscellaneous invoice. I haven't got a purchase order for it. It's defaulted the vendor's GL account for the type of thing we buy from that vendor. We can say, okay, then create a miscellaneous invoice, which will create the invoice now on the system, and now it matches. Whole process finished, post all the batches, the whole lot of invoices can be posted, okay? So that is how we see our direction of slicking up the purchase ledger activity. We have a whole session on it this afternoon. Goodness knows what I'm going to talk about now that we've shown you that. But we are very interested in your input. We'll explain the thought process behind it, what it is actually doing, and we'd be very interested in your input in terms of how we could make it better. So, finally, before lunch, a bit of light sorbet in between the news of the day and your no doubt extensive lunch. We're going to talk about Ask Nora, and thank you to Ian. I thought Ian's presentation was great. It was really interesting to see how deploying automated technology, how easy it is for users to forget it's automated technology. And to some degree, that's a good thing. Who should care when they ask somebody whether it's a real user or not, as long as you get the right answer? So it's very much the approach that we took when we were designing Ask Nora. What we wanted to do is extend the capability. Today, you can ask Nora by email to send you a report. That report, in general, is a Jet report, by the way. So we use Jet reports to create the electronic form, as you saw. It's sent to a customer, and that's why it can look pretty, and it's pulled information out of NAV and so on. So we use Jet reports to do that, but normally we're asking it by email, getting an answer back as an Excel spreadsheet. And we wanted to provide a different way to ask Nora for information and not just ask for reports. We want to provide information, not ERP, to some users. You will all have seen this, where in a lot of organizations, the sales director doesn't use the NAV system. So when he's going to visit the customer the next day, before he goes and asks, somebody in the sales receivables department, oh, how much money do we owe? How much money do Canning Group owe us? Why does he have to ask? Why doesn't he do it himself? Because he's not an ERP user. He's not used to using an ERP system. He wants to know how much something's in stock that he's interested in flogging to the customer he's going to see. He goes and asks the stock guy, have we got any of these things in stock? It's very common that you'll see lots of people outside the core ERP users ask other people for information which is already in the business system. So we wanted to hide the complexity of an ERP, create a whole set of technologies that enable us to keep extending this over the coming years and make it more and more clever. Very importantly, build in NAV-specific knowledge. So we're not trying to make something which is, never mind whatever system you plugged it in, it would be this clever. We're trying to say we want to make our knowledge of what NAV means, what things that we know about NAV, we want to put that knowledge into an application that enables us to deploy information to an end user without them having to think too much. A great example of that might be if I asked what the postcode of a company was. It's a fairly clear question. If you asked a user what is the postcode for XYZ company, they would tell you the postcode. If you asked what is the address of that customer, they wouldn't just give you what in NAV terms is a one-line address field. There's a field in NAV called address. But we know as humans that when somebody says what's their address, we mean the whole thing. We mean the address, city, county, postcode. We mean everything. It's just a sort of bit of human logic that if you just let the system just deal with it, you might only get part of the answer. And that's the sort of thought process we're putting into this product. So, to introduce you to Nora, we're going to go into any browser. It could be any browser. It happens to be this browser. It could be any browser. It could be Microsoft Explorer. And you'll see if we click on here, we've already got a shortcut to Ask Nora. So when we click Ask Nora, we log in, we get our interface to asking Nora questions. Okay. So we'll start off, I guess we should start off by being polite. It's very nice to be polite. Obviously, Nora knows who we are. So an example is we could say, what's the balance of Elkhorn Airport? So we're worried about a customer, and we want to know how much money they owe us because we've heard a rumor they might be going bust. Okay, so there's the balance. Just hover over it to show, don't click on it, but you hover over it. There's actually a hyperlink there to go to the NAV client. We'll see that later. So she's found the information and said, by the way, if you want to go and look at the information in NAV, here it is. But now we're in that conversation, we say, okay, it's interesting. How about Canon? Canon's another customer. Okay. So we didn't ask for the balance because if I was a user, if I was a human and I asked you one question and I asked you another question, we do that. We say, oh, he's probably talking about the balance because he asked me the balance for that, therefore he's probably still talking about the balance. So there's the balance for Canning Group, and again with the link to the information. How much of that is overdue? So all of it's overdue. We really ought to go and speak to these people there. A lot of money that they owe us. Maybe there's not a problem. What's their credit limit? 30,000 quid. They are definitely somebody we should go and talk about. When was the last payment? Okay, so they paid us that amount of money fairly recently. That's the information. Okay, so you can see all the time, we haven't told it the Canning Group. We're assuming we know about the Canning Group. We're already talking about the Canning Group. And until I talk about something else, we'll assume we'll carry on talking about the Canning Group, just like we do as humans. Okay. To explain a little bit, the last payment. Last payment is an enhanced field. We talked about it this morning. There's an enhanced field on the customer that says last payment looks at the customer ledger entry, the last one, and returns all of these fields stuck together so that we make a nice little sentence. So an enhanced field is a way of giving Nora vocabulary. How do I get there from Bath? I happen to live near Bath. So, okay, here's the directions. So we click on there, and we go out, and we get directions of how to get to the Canning Group. Okay. So, since we need to go and see these people, yeah, remind me to visit Canon Group about their credit limit. Okay, so she's created a task. You might remember when we looked at the queues earlier on, one of the queues was tasks. You could drill down and you could create tasks. We've created a very simple task mechanism inside NAV to replace what I consider slightly cumbersome to-dos. So Nora's created a task. We could actually look at what are my tasks. Okay, here's a list of all the tasks that I've got in NAV already set up, so I can see what else I've got to do. So this is just asking for NAV information. My tasks is a list of information created with that report tool we showed you earlier on. So one of the things on here is that we've got to check the stock levels. So what's the free stock of chairs? Okay, so here's a bunch of chairs. Bearing in mind, free stock was the field that we added as an enhanced field earlier on. So we extended a vocabulary earlier on when we created that free stock field. Okay, which of these fields do we want? The Paris chair. Okay, so that's the free stock of the Paris chair that we have at the moment. When is the next delivery? Again, next delivery is an enhanced field against an item which gives you back 25 Paris chairs are due on this date from Progressive Furnishing, and that's the PO it's on. Okay. Show me 106095. So you can ask Nora to show you information. If you click on there, it'll take you into the web client and take you to the appropriate place. So all those links that are coming back have always got a link that if you click on, it'll take you into the web client and show you the appropriate page in the web client. Okay. And there is the appropriate thing. Okay. Okay, so that's the purchase order that we're looking at. Go back to Nora. What's the free stock of Moscow chairs? So obviously, if you ask a more specific question, which returns, okay, well, I don't need to ask you for a list of things because I know there's a chair. I found a thing called Moscow chairs. And by the way, look, it's not called Moscow chair. It's called Moscow swivel chair. So it's smarter than just doing a simple filter. So it's 579, which is probably not as many as I want. So can you order me some? Okay, so she said, I couldn't find a quantity, so I didn't say, can you order me 10? I said some. I couldn't find a quantity, so I'll use the reorder quantity. It's not a bad assumption. We've got a reorder quantity set on the item, I'll order that. And she's created a purchase order with it on, and if you click on there, you can go into it. But actually, I think 20 is not enough. So can you order me another 25? Okay, so in this case, she's increased the quantity of that purchase order because there is a purchase order already on the system, open, not released for the same item, so she's added it to that purchase order. And to finish our sort of value, looking at our stock, we could say, can you show me the stock value report? Oh, show my. Okay, so you remember earlier on we created that report in our quick report tool, stock value report. Yeah, so we go to there, that's the first part of the report, and if we click at the top there, we can link into NAV and we'll see the actual report as we created it earlier on, with all our fields, our item category, our range code and inventory value and everything else. Okay, some quick ones to run through to close, just to sort of broaden the idea. Something for finance people. Show my expenses. Show me my expenses. So my expenses is a report. There's a report created with that quick report, which is a list of my expenses, and here are all my expenses. Okay. So what's the net value? The net change of cleaning. So net change is a field on the general ledger account. Cleaning is a name of an account. Yeah. Okay, that's the value of the accounts thing. What about travel? What's the net change this year? So again, we're still talking about, just assuming we're still talking about a travel account. Earlier on, if you remember, we have a panel called KPIs. Yeah, we have the KPI panel. What are my KPIs? So there's the inventory value enhanced field that we added earlier on to the KPIs. So she's checking, oh, actually, there isn't a field called KPIs, but there is a panel called KPIs. I'll return that information. And then there's some built-in extensibility, which broadens it enormously. So if we ask things like, find out the exchange rate for the dollar. So this mechanism is actually amazingly, this isn't coming from NAV. Some of you might be familiar, there's a site called Wolfram Alpha, which is a source of information that you can use on a website. So we've integrated to Wolfram Alpha. It's actually the same source that Siri uses. So if you say, how many pounds is 5,000 yen? So if we say find out, we mean go and find it out. And go outside of NAV and find out how many pounds 5,000 yen is. It's apparently 29.28 British pounds. Okay. And we could just follow up to see if we've improved anything as a result of today's presentation. Find out the share price for Microsoft. So if we've improved things or reduced things as a result of today's. Okay. Is that okay for you, Christian? Yeah? So, that, I hope, was at least of interest. It's an enormous passion of ours to turn this into something which really engages with end users, with people who are not normally NAV users, and as you can imagine, we could exploit this by our Sun Hydraulics customers could ask Nora what the inventory is rather than send a quote in to get a quote back saying we haven't got any inventory. So we've got a dynamic way of external people to our NAV systems asking for information. Paul and I actively use it when we're using NAV. We actively use it because it's quicker than going to a customer list, finding the Canon group, bringing up the card. We genuinely use it as end users because it provides the information that we want quicker than we would otherwise in a demo, in use in a normal life. So, for me, it will just keep getting better. Microsoft will keep spending more money on it. We'll keep spending our time, effort, and passion on it. It will keep getting better, and we hope you will come to the sessions this afternoon to drill down into more of those subjects. Thanks for your time today.